This revolution is not going away.
This is the Ron Paul Liberty Report with Ron Paul, Daniel McAdams, and Chris Rossini.
We are all ambassadors of the Ron Paul doctrine, and it's so simple. Just tell the truth.
An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Chris Rossini, our co-host. Chris, welcome to the program.
It's great to be with you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. You know, lots of things going on in the news, and as long as we have the current president, there's always going to be something. Sometimes it's consistently wrong, and if you want to talk about war, well, are we having a new war? Yes. The war just ended. So it keeps us busy. But today we want to talk about some of the things he says about inflation. Everybody should be talking about inflation. But they talk about inflation. They're willing to talk about inflation, but they don't mention the word and who does it. They talk about the consumer can't afford, to buy stuff anymore, which is very important. And that is another way of saying the currency has been inflated. But that is available. One thing is that we do, Chris, and you've mentioned this before, is that we do work with Birch Gold, who talks about how to think about and what one might do with this issue. And today we will follow up, talking some more about inflation.
That's right, Dr. Paul. Yeah, money is losing value. You need more of it to buy the same thing. You need more of it to buy less of the same thing. This week, my parents were complaining, something, I forget what it was, they bought. It would be 16 ounces, and now they're paying the same price for 13 ounces. So that's how inflation affects us. And, our gut reaction is to blame the company, that we're getting ripped off by them, but we can't blame them because they have to deal with the inflation, and they have to keep their customers from, revolting, because most people don't understand where this comes from. And it comes from government spending and the Federal Reserve counterfeiting money. And the government and the Fed want you to blame the businessman because that keeps the heat off of them. So, it's a shame, but this is the way it works. So you can protect yourself with gold. We have our friends at Birch Gold Group that are willing to help if you're interested just in getting information on what you can do, what your possibilities are. And if you're interested, you can text Ron to 989898. Birch will text you back with free information, and you can take it from there. There's no obligation to be their customer, but it's, just to educate yourself to begin with. And if you want to take it further, of course, that's what they're there for. So again, if you're interested in protecting yourself from this inflation that we're going to talk about today that the president loves, text Ron to 989898. Back to you, Dr. Paul.
Very, very good. And as I said in my introduction, we'll talk about inflation, what it means, and some of the definitions. And a lot of people just want to narrow it down by avoiding the real cause and talking about the consumer can't afford to buy anything, the affordability thing, which is only a half a truth and a distortion because they won't talk about the real thing. I have a copy of an AP story here. I want to read a short sentence, and it has to do with the president. Trump has pledged in his 2024 campaign to quickly vanquish inflation, but his argument now is that higher prices are solely a function of the Iran war raising energy costs. Well, we've been in war for a long time, and we still prices have gone up, but this sounds like this is unique. And there is something unique about war in a relationship to the standard of living at home. Because wars cost money, and most of the wars we've been in, especially since World War II, is they're unnecessary war, they're undeclared war, they're immoral wars, and they cost a lot of money. Nobody knows why we started them, and nobody has a plan to stop them. So this continues to go. So there is a relationship, because during that period of time, a lot of money is spent, and people recognize that the relationship of the war and that prices are going up. But they just said war causes inflation. Well, it does, but it's indirect is what happens. Is wars do cost a lot of money. They cost a lot. Of Federal Reserve knows that the people have to steal from the people, or they have to steal from the people through the inflation tax, just getting the Federal Reserve to print the money. And this is what happens during the wartime. So war is paying for the war, would be a better way to put it. Paying for the war, resorts to inflating the currency, which devalues the currency. And guess what? Things become unaffordable. People can't afford things because the value of the money goes down. It's as simple as the thing that most people still have learned in that first year of economic, supply and demand. That's what controls prices. But they never teach that there are two parts of that. The supply and demand of the product that people want to buy have a lot to do with it. The supply of wheat in a season, growth season, makes a big difference. But what should be talked about is the supply and demand of the purchasing product, which is the money, which is the Federal Reserve note. And they barely talk about both of them. It's always an excuse. And then they have a lot of statistics to reassure the people that things are being taken care of. And that's what I think we witness, with the current administration and with typical politicians. They have to distract the real cause of the inflated prices, because it's going to hurt almost everybody, or it's going to have to be paid for, and everybody's going to have to pay for it. Everybody was supposed to benefit by printing up all the money. Not everybody did. A certain group benefited more than others. But I think they have to come around to understanding how this war is related to the inflation of the currency, and why people get poorer, and why right now, as far as I'm concerned, we live at one of the most critical periods in my lifetime, and maybe in a lot longer than that, how serious it is in a worldwide event, because of the strength over the many, many decades, with the strength of the reserve currency, which is the dollar. And the adjustment always comes. You just can't predict what it is. But most people believe that correction is underway. Chris.
Right, Dr. Paul. Yeah, this week, President Trump told us that I love inflation. That's what he said. And you may think to yourself, oh, well, presidents can say things. Well, this is not the first time. Back in May, the reporters were asking him about look at your polls and Americans' financial situation. And he said, I don't think about Americans' financial situation. That's what he said back in May. This is the big, beautiful bill guy. That's not very Jeffersonian. Jefferson, less government. President Trump is big government. So all his words over time and his actions point to, yeah, he does love inflation and he doesn't care about our financial situation by his words and his actions. But if you're watching him day to day, nothing is ever wrong. Everything he does is the best thing that has ever been done. So it's very tricky if you're a citizen, because he is very persuasive in that way, in the way that he delivers it. But, people are noticing. Somebody pointed out that 38 times since, February 28th, when he started this war, he's claimed that, the peace deal is right there. Iran is so desperate. They have nothing. They're totally destroyed. And, the next day, they shot down an Apache. They have closed the strait for 3 months. Iran is not desperate and weak and all this stuff, but he portrays it to people, and that's good enough for him. And he does it in such a way that it's rapid fire, one after another. So when you're saying, no, this is not right, there's already a new one that he's got out there. So all of this is bad, bottom line, for the American people. We're, getting the short end of the stick big time with inflation, with war that has taken all the oxygen out of his administration, and we're paying for it.
Yes, now he's made some predictions off and on. The war's ending, the markets go up. Nope, we have to bomb them a couple more times. It's back and forth. And, it's even in the morning. There may be a major positive announcement that we're going to cease on the bombing, and then by noontime they've changed their mind and they're back to bombing again. But the president's made a statement which I can understand why a lot of people would believe this, because it is important, and that is during the war, certainly the Iraq war, and oil has gone up. During the 70s, oil went up tremendously, and there was a lot of inflation in general, price inflation. But right now, there's hints that the price of oil may go down, even though the average price in the country is still over $4, and diesel is well over $5. So we're not quite there. But the president predicts that if oil's down, everything will go down. And that is the point that I want to challenge. Yes, it might affect a lot of things because oil is a big deal. Oil is a big deal because most of the thing is you got to import the oil, you got to use the oil. People have to drive their cars and trucks, so it does hit everybody. But it doesn't mean that everything is going to go down. Some things will go down. The one thing is you can't predict where the money will go if you don't spend it on a war, where the people might spend the money. Matter of fact, when they inflate the currency, you can't predict how the people are going to spend, especially you have a hint when a war is going on and they want to pay for the war, the money's going to go into more weaponry in the military industrial complex. But everything is not a correct answer, because just as inflation, if they print the money is scattered about and nobody makes the prediction. And now if the war ends and there's a cut in spending, it will not be able to predict exactly what will happen. Some prices will go down, but it's bound to do one thing that's pretty consistent, is there's a certain class of people who suffer the most, and that's the middle class. And that is why this is a big political issue right now, because the middle class right now suffers the most, and that's the war tax. It's a hidden, ugly, immoral tax because they print the money, dilute the value, and the people who suffer the most, and they don't get compensated for it. They get token compensated, but the money in a system like this is mal-distributed. It goes into the pockets of the people who get to use the money first, and they love it, and they can invest, and they can gamble, they can run the stock markets up, and eventually, though, the markets are strong, and they will sort this out, both the inflation and all the malinvestment and all the debt. It gets sorted out by economic laws, but the one law that people should observe, and that is you can't predict exactly when and exactly how it's going to go, but the market will say it's out of whack, it's not working, the value of the currency is going down, it's going to affect international trade, and eventually the market says you have to liquidate the debt and you have to get rid of the mistakes made because the interest rates have been artificially low, and the low interest rate means people are saving their money and encourages people to invest in money. So you have to correct this if you want true economic growth. And we're at a period of time where we're transitioning to a system of government that's been lasting for many decades, whereas we have had so much waste, we could almost have continuous growth, and we are very wealthy, we still are, but the signs are there that there will be the correction on the deficit, and there will be the correction on the malinvestment, and that is what has to be dealt with, and that is what they ignore. You don't hear them talking about that very much on the evening business news.
That's right, Dr. Paul. And it would be unrealistic to expect a president that's campaigning to fulfill, all of his promises. We know it would be too much to expect. But going back on no wars is the biggest one. And that's exactly what he did. And the reason is because war then dominates everything. Nothing else matters except the empire. No making America great again. No, does Congress even, I don't even know if they exist anymore. I never even have to talk about Congress. They are a non-issue. We're now in June of the second year. He only gets 4 years. And it's been Greenland and Venezuela and Yemen and Cuba and Iran and Russia. That's all it is. Everything besides America. And that is why going back on wars was the biggest betrayal of them all. And take notice of when it comes to these countries I named, they're not threats to us at all. But look at what happens when you come up against a Russia, against an Iran. It's a much different story. They can hold their own, and then they just spread this out where who knows how long this is going to last. And we have to remember we get nothing out of this. Nothing except bills, inflation, dead and injured soldiers. That's it. So whenever you hear, oh, we're going to make tons of money, not us, not the people, perhaps the elites, perhaps, but they're losing. So maybe not even them. In any case, that was the big, there are other things that he hasn't done, obviously, because it's all about war. But going into war, that has been his downfall.
I like to think about, because I'm compelled to think about it, when everything that I've seen happen, whether I'm close to it or distant from it, in politics, statements made and policies designed and the propaganda I listen to, and it's not easy to sort out because some of it's just honest, misinformation because they went to the wrong schools and they never got hold of Austrian economics. There's a lot of excuses, but there's another phase because there's a temptation for all of the politicians to exaggerate their campaigning. They say certain things, they make these promises, and then all of a sudden they modify it when they get in. They know they're not going to do it, and most people know they're not able to do it, but it's the process that goes on and on. But I think that it really becomes a real big question for me. Why does the president come up with this statement that was just scattered everywhere yesterday? It might even turn out to be one of the biggest statements that affects these elections coming up. To state what's going on is, I love inflation. Mm-hmm. But he probably basing this on, I can end a war anytime I want. I'll just quit fighting and the war will be over. Well, why did you start the dumb war? This sort of thing. So he's going to do this, but he's to be so bold is, I love inflation, without any real explanation. But he probably was taught by economic people that the war is expensive and you have to spend a lot of money, and it is going to help, but it's only going to help in a certain specialized way, and you can't predict what's going to happen. So it's a lot more complex that says, well, we're going to end a war and there'll be no price inflation again. No, it's not going to happen. If you don't slow down the presses and quit Mickey Mousing around with the interest rates. See, the price of money is the real instrument that messes up the economy, and that's all the interest rates and the Fed. Directly sometimes and indirectly affect the interest rates, misleading people. And that, if that isn't stopped, all it'll do, let's say we can stop spending so much money overseas, which isn't going to happen, it's going to continue. But let's say we do cut from it, but we still, do you think they're going to quit putting the money and we're going to balance the budget? That's not going to happen. Matter of fact, they assume that we don't want that to happen because they're always looking toward the next war again. If there's a little comment between, he said, well, we got to look at this Cuba there. I wonder how much it's going to cost for us to invade Cuba. That kind of nonsense. So I think this statement is going to, I'll be fascinated to watch what happens to the polling and all of this. Is somebody thinks, I love inflation, but besides, it'll go away because I can bring the oil prices down. I've already done that. So we'll see what happens. But right now, there's no reason to be overly optimistic about a smooth sailing and a restoration of sound money and balanced budgets.
Very good, Dr. Paul. I will finish up with my closing thoughts. For our viewers, we do not like reporting like this, meaning we beat up on the president every day. And it's not because we like to and want to, it's because he forces us to. It was the exact opposite in the beginning. We were praising him, especially when Elon was involved. We were praising Trump. Unfortunately, it was, a couple weeks, a month, tops. So it's not, pro or anti-Trump. It's, we have to tell the truth as we see it, as the best we understand it, and we're not going to fake it. I don't watch the television, but I could just imagine that it's the exact opposite of what we say on this show, because they have to fake it. The president fakes it every day. He has lots of influencers on social media who were like him when he was campaigning and are like him now, just cheering him on because it's him. They have no principles, no right and wrong, no ethics. Just what he says is what we're going to repeat. And I would bet that the TV, again, I don't watch it, is the same exact thing. So it's not, it's hard even for me because I have to pay these gas prices too and the food prices. So I'm reflecting my own life on this show too. So it's not an anti-Trump thing. So it's, we're going to praise the good, and it was only a month or so, but we're going to criticize the bad. And unfortunately, we're doing a lot of criticizing. It's probably going to stay this way throughout the rest of his administration.
Yeah, when we think about it, we're around the world, and a lot of people believe we should be because we're strong and we have a moral nation, we have a constitution, so we have a lot more responsibility to spread our message of freedom and liberty. And a lot of people believe that, and they want to, and I want to believe it too, and I have ways that I think you should do it, but it's through an educational system, teaching people the difference, and not to say we're going to impose on you. You do it our way. If you don't, we're going to bomb you, or we'll put on sanctions on you, or we'll put on tariffs on you. All these things, and that is the part I don't like. But I think there should be a good effort to spread the message of liberty, but there the people who are in charge, and that means the Republicans and the Democrats, are always planning. Some of the votes just recently to try to get that war to wind down. It's getting closer on the votes because the people are getting sick and tired of the war and the spending, and they're catching on. So that is one thing. The people have to decide enough is enough. But the people on the inside don't worry about it because we have so many places that we can go. We're already there. I mean, just thinking just these last few years, and we've been working, in Ukraine since 2014 when we participated in the coup. In 1953, we participated in the coup in Iran. It goes on and on. We don't let go. And we're always, everything I see, and I'm not dreaming this, but I know the people who want to think the best of us don't want to have to deal with this, but it's something that people will have to accept, that it is going to be very difficult. But where have we not been involved? We were in 126 countries, and we spend more money than the rest, about the next 10 countries. And even China saves their money and invests it better than we do, even though right now we're trying to compete with them by promoting at the executive level right now, this corporatism. The government's going to invest. Oh, we need to have a stake in this. We need to be investing in AI, all this thing. And it just goes on and on. But what about looking for a military activity? Because, military-industrial complex, they need a steady income if nothing else. They want a steady income. Well, we've been in Ukraine. We've been in Vietnam. We've been in the Middle East, and Ukraine recently. But in some places, the American people don't know that we're really involved. I mean, a lot of the times right now, the people are getting to realize that we're financing everything going on in the Middle East. If we just took our money out of the Middle East, believe me, that I think it would become more peaceful, and it would be. I actually have a personal belief it would be a lot better off for Israel if it happened. But right now, there's going to be a ganging up on the United States, and right now, when Iran strikes back, they strike back at the countries, the Arab nations that have been friendly to the United States, so it's already spreading. But we spend money. We're participants. We're partners in there. Like Lebanon. Oh yeah, there's a war going on, but that war wouldn't go on. It's our money that they use endlessly. And how about the bombing of Gaza and all this? They literally are talking about what about Cuba? Don't you think we ought to spread our goodness to Cuba? They're just begging us to come in and help them out and restore their liberty. And it goes on and on. And then there are some others that say, oh no, we need more warships out around Taiwan. We have to keep them on their toes because we might have to get in on that. A lot of that is talk and propaganda and all, but it's all negative as far as I'm concerned. They should work hard at what they're doing, spreading a message, but they shouldn't be spreading a message of militarism that we offer. We should be spreading the message of liberty the best way and as often as we can because it's so necessary. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Thanks for watching the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Like and subscribe to help spread the message. And until next time, live free.
This country is in a revolution, and I happen to be lucky enough to be part of it.